In the firehouse, every second counts. The best tool for the job? A well-rested firefighter. Dreamseat firehouse furniture, built for durability, designed for comfort, because your best tool is your team at their best.
All right, welcome everyone to episode 48 of APS Radio. My name is Jim Burneka, and I'm joined today by Stephanie Ryall.
Hey,
It's great to have you here.
thank you.
I'm excited for this episode because we're going to kind of do, it's going to be cool stuff, and it's going to be a deep dive and be, I think, super interesting for people.
I agree. It
Yeah,
always is.
yeah. So I wanted, this is going to be a little different than most of my episodes because I feel like I need to give the background of how I came into knowing you to begin with.
Yeah,
And then we'll just go from there.
love it.
Okay. So here's the gist of it. Myself, just like a lot of us out there, I had pretty bad anger issues and out of control, never knew when stuff was going to hit me wrong. The family's walking around on eggshells. It wasn't a good situation. And the truth is, I really didn't have that much to be angry about. Like things are okay. Um, but I was still just so angry all the time. And I talked to my clinician, Sabrina, and I just talked to her. This was last May. And I just said, I need to do something. I need to try something because I'm at my wit's end. I know my family is super upset and I feel like I'm running out of time and options with that. And this is after, for those that don't know, like this, I've already done at this point in time TMS. I've done stellar ganglion block a couple times, medications, done all these different treatments. And it certainly helped a lot for most things, but my anger still was prevalent. And so Sabrina's attitude was, do you ever have any concussions when you were a kid? She was going to the whole TBI kind of mindset, and I said, yeah, I definitely had a couple. And she said, well, let's get a brain scan. Let's see what's going on. And I should know too, this is important. Like most, these episodes that we do, they're video and they're also audio. For this show in particular, if you're on the audio, I can't tell you enough to switch to the video because we're going to show you the brain scans, the results, all that kind of stuff that I think you would appreciate actually seeing it. So if you're on the audio, skip that, come join us and see how, first of all, how beautiful we both are, right? Yeah. But so in June, I is when I got to meet you and do this first EEG.
Yeah.
So I'm going to now step out of the way and let you do your thing.
Okay, so a lot of times people think that EEG is just for neurologists and it's just to diagnose epilepsy and seizures. And it does so much more than that. We can use the electroencephalogram in order to see neuromarkers for all sorts of mental disorders. ADHD, autism, schizophrenia, mood disorders, insomnia, emotional trauma. If your trauma happened younger than 10, we can actually see ages that your trauma happened because it's imprinted in a certain part of your brain in the right temporal parietal occipital area. I mean, it's amazing. We can start to read it like a book, and it's not perfect, and we don't diagnose with it. And the main reason we don't diagnose with it, even though most of us are licensed practitioners who can diagnose, is because prognostically, because we have tools to help you, we don't believe that you're stuck with symptoms anymore. We believe that when we show you these neuromarkers for for these symptoms that we can then put you on simple neuromodulation techniques and train your brain to fire differently, and you'll experience a relief of the symptoms, especially if we've also found metabolic issues through blood, hair, urine tests, or other things, and you have different dietary and sleep changes. I mean, you can get better. You really can get better. So we use the EEG in order to establish a baseline for your neuromarkers. We understand what your symptoms are, and then we create a protocol unique to your brain. And so I did an EEG of your brain. We did 10 minutes eyes closed, 10 minutes eyes open, and a 21-minute visual continuous performance task where you had to click only when you saw two animals in a row and not click when you saw animal plant or animal person. And that tested your visual and your auditory and your cognitive and your reactive parts of your brain. And so then I showed you the results of that EEG with your people. And I think that was a really profound moment for you, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, we did the test, and then we actually met up, I think, for the very next week,
Mm-hmm.
and we did a Zoom,
Yeah.
and I had on that Zoom call, I had Sabrina, my clinician. I had my wife and my mother as well. And yeah, that was a big day for me when you went over this. Go in and kind of talk about like what you saw. What
So
was going on? First of all, let it be known I do have a brain.
he has a good brain. Yeah. Well, and also let it be known that you didn't tell me about yourself before I scanned your brain. I go into EEGs blind. I don't like to know your case history before I look at your data because I'm human and it means that I'm going to interpret in a biased way. So I do not want to know much about you. So before we read your EEG, I did not know that you had an anger problem, I don't believe. Correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong.
No, I think that's accurate.
Yeah, that would be different than my usual protocol. So we met, I showed you muscle tension that was over the left temporal area, and I explained to you that whenever there's muscle tension, the brain's sending signals to muscle fibers to stay tense. That usually means there's a vulnerable part of the brain. And so we did find maybe some compromised memory stuff with slow firing in that temporal area. And then we found a lot of slow features in the part of your brain responsible for impulsivity and behavior regulation. And so I was explaining to you that basically your brain is going to react before you establish time or insight to things. And I remember that that was really validating for you because I helped to explain to your family that you were not aware when you were reacting, that this really was kind of a reaction forward principle, and that I believed that we could speed that up, and I believed that we could curb some of that. I also saw that you had some emotional trauma and some visual hypervigilance that was contributing to some of that reactivity. At some point, the brain's adaptive, and 100% of the EEG is genetic too. So these are all things that we're prone to, and if we have the right stressor, we'll leak and react that way. But this was coming from somewhere. There was a reason, and a really good reason, your brain was a reactive brain. And when you explained to me that you had a history of being a first responder, it made sense to me that your brain would kind of need to react and pursue safety and defense in a situation before it really evaluated kind of like the logic or the emotions of what was going on. But that wasn't adaptive for you anymore. That was just infecting your family and something that you really wanted to be free from, but that you felt powerless over. I showed you in the back of your head, which I'll show you when we share screen. But I showed you marks in the back of your head and your visual cortex at the very back of your head, where your brain was just telling your eyes to look around constantly, like twice a second at least. And that was keeping you from really being able to engage or focus on anything. And then I also showed you that you had some social perceptual issues where basically you had a blindness to how your behavior was impacting other people. at C4 and T6, especially right central and temporal parietal, you had this idling that really kept you from understanding how your behavior was impacting other people. And so your brain didn't care because it didn't know it needed to care. Your empathic awareness cut off. But think about it, as a first responder, if we have empathic awareness every time we're responding to a crisis, our emotions are going to get too involved. We're going to be too emotionally invested, and it's going to compromise our ability to react and keep everybody safe and eliminate the danger. So it was, again, adaptive for your brain for the length of your career to cut off the empathy or the caring. Not that you didn't care about the people that you were helping and serving, but that you were taking yourself out of it. But now, when, being a family man, yourself needs to be in it. You're attending to the emotional needs of your wife and your kids, and you've got parents. And so that's no longer suitable for the environment that you're in. We also talked about, in addition to some of that distractibility that you were showing with the visual hypervigilance and kind of not remembering things right away, I showed you on the front left of your brain, alongside the memory kind of stuff on the left temporal, that you had a salience issue. The gate that kept your brain from taking all of the stimulation and all of the environment in at once was kind of swinging open. You had this slower wave activity. And so what that does is, instead of information filtering into the subconscious and then your brain letting you have whatever consciously it thinks you need, your brain was taking all of the stimulation, all of the sensory environmental issues and information in consciously. So that was very overwhelming. So your brain was just getting bombarded with data. But again, in first responding, that's very adaptive for you to have salience, relevance, everything. Your brain has to consider everything relevant when you're a first responder, because you cannot miss details. But unfortunately, when you're trying to kind of slow down, be a family man, when your brain's attuned to every detail and you notice every little thing and you're getting upset about it and you're used to being super reactive, you're going to be reactive to things that you notice that really should have been filtered in the subconscious in the first place. You had really obvious neuromarkers for there's beta spindling at the central strip for insomnia. And so I showed you that as well. And I basically showed you how a lack of sleep was killing the electrogenesis, or the energy production in your brain, which ultimately is going to fry you and make you prone to being more impulsive and irritable as well. So that's what we went over.
It's a lot to take in.
I know.
It's a lot, but I mean, for all those listeners or viewers out there, think about this. I mean, and check this off as we go. You got anger issues? Are you easily irritable? Is your sleep crap? Do you feel like you're always on edge, always scanning, always hypervigilant? I mean, I know that's a lot of us. And it took this whole thing to just really understand the magnitude that my choice in career, how it just changed my brain. And how it was probably, I imagine, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was good to have that change. Like, I needed that change in some areas for my occupation. But now that I'm retired, I don't need that stuff anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
But you had to show your brain that it was okay to fire differently, which is exactly what neurofeedback does. It gives the brain feedback about its own performance, and then it rewards it with simple video game tasks and beeps to fire in new ways. And the brain takes it on and says, yeah, I agree with you. I really like firing this way. I'm just going to keep doing it. So then it's permanent without you having to continue training the rest of your life.
Let's get to that in a second. I want to just real quick. I want to stress how important this moment was when we were on this Zoom with my family, and you essentially said, and I'm paraphrasing it, but you basically said Jim is not an a-hole, and he doesn't have the opportunity to think before he reacts. And so you guys, like, and that is because of the job. And you have to understand that, and you have to give him some grace and understand that at any given time, he is ready to go at any time. So don't don't poke at him. Don't start him up, like be aware of this and know he doesn't want to do this. He doesn't, because every time I would act out, I would instant regret, but I couldn't stop myself. And so you laid all that out there, which was so helpful to me because my wife, my mom, like they just thought I was a dick. And I wasn't. I didn't mean to be. And so you laid that all out there, but then you also followed up with and I think I can help them. And that was huge. Just everything about that conversation. Like for the first time, I was like, all right, this I'm hoping this works. Because also at the same time, I've tried so much
You had tried so much,
and it nothing really took
right?
until this. So let's talk about what we did next after that brain scan, where all the work really took place.
Yeah. Okay, so I had you rent equipment and I used Eager as our neurofeedback training software. And I developed protocols based on what I saw in your EEG that were specific to your brain. And your protocols were a combination of eyes open and eyes closed protocols. We focused more heavily on the eyes open, but the eyes closed were really important. So the eyes open protocols were focused on getting your neurons to fire at different speeds and powers that were conducive to the new lifestyle that you were in. And the eyes closed protocols were designed for alpha theta training to go deep in your subconscious and help your brain resolve subconscious traumas that were left over from your old career, and the different things that you experienced within it, and to give you kind of a peace and a clarity. So, do you want me to go into what the games entailed or what your time was like, or?
Yeah, like let's talk about a typical session. And I was doing these sessions usually 3 times a week.
Mhm.
Um, go ahead and like, what would you set up for me typically? Because you're doing this remotely. You're there in the Cincinnati area. I'm here in the Dayton area.
Mhm.
We're signing on to different computers and you're setting everything up for me where you're at.
Yeah, that's the coolest part, especially for anybody listening that isn't local to Cincinnati, to know that, I mean, I have clients all over, even internationally. I've got people in France and Mexico, and then all sorts of states, because this isn't a US specific software. So all you need is a Wi-Fi connection, and then I have you make a username on Parsec, which is a remote desktop software usually used for gaming, which means it's fast enough for brain waves, which fire like 268 miles an hour. So we're dealing with a really small amplified signal. And then we're dealing with really, really fast neurons. So we need fast software. And then I help you download the Eager software to put on your computer. So you had an amplifier and you had electrodes. Some of them were flat and some of them were clips. And you would dip the electrodes in a sticky paste that was kind of like toothpaste and Elmer's glue mixed together. And you would take a Q-tip and you'd dip it in this blue gel and you'd prep your skin and your scalp. And then you would stick the electrodes wherever I told you to stick the electrodes. For you, I had you stick them at the center on the left and the right, and then at the front and the left and the right. And then as we progressed, I moved you to the center and the front right, where we had that impulsivity, irritability stuff. Then I had you do a trauma training protocol that's Seaburn-Fisher's FPO2. You go in the right orbit of the eye so it can hit the amygdala and hit all that trauma that's making you react and think that you're in danger when you're not. And then followed that up with more of that center to front right. So what it looked like for you was you would text me the days of the week that you wanted to do that week. I would say yes. At that time that we had agreed upon, I'd join your computer on Parsec. I would open up the software for you. You would have already had the electrodes where we indicated on our shared Google Sheet. So we tracked your progress on a Google Sheet too, so that you could see your scores coming down. You could see where we trained and what your numbers were doing. And we had conversations about that too. And then I would put you in front of a simple video game task. Eventually it gets boring, but it's really cool at first. But your brain needs to learn how to be idle, so boring is good. And then you would do however many minutes of the training that we had designed. I had you doing 12 and 15 for the two that we were doing 2 and 1, and then I had you do 25 or 30 for the other ones. And when you had to switch, I would have you switch. You'd put the electrodes in another place, you'd play another game, and then I'd show you your scores after, and you'd get on the sheet and indicate how you felt after training. And if you want, we can share your training sheet if you want.
Well, I think I can just even describe it. You were looking to basically see, how my sleep was, how my attitude was. And a lot of it would make me tired. A lot of the training, like it was mentally exhausting going through it. So I just knew that I would be down a little bit after I did the training. And we ended up doing about 6 months worth, and I want to say around 70 sessions or so.
Yeah, it was, I've got the number here. You did, drum roll, 70 sessions exactly.
Oh, on the dot.
Yeah.
That
we recorded in your sheet, but we're pretty good about that.
And they, one of the first game you had me play was Pac-Man.
Yeah.
And everybody's played Pac-Man, and it's a very similar thing. It's when you explain this, it's crazy though. Like all you out there, picture playing Pac-Man, but there's no joystick.
With your brain.
You're just controlling, I don't know if it's Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man or whatever, but the Pac person, you're just controlling it with your brain and getting it to move forward with your head. And that was just kind of, it's cool. It's unique. It's very futuristic.
Yeah, Pac-Man only moves when your brain is firing at the speed and power that we indicate on the training. So for you, I needed you to increase neurons that were firing between 12 and 15 hertz and inhibit neurons firing at any other speed. It would be like going into a room full of people who were all talking in different languages and saying that I only wanted to hear the people speaking in English. And so I would make a noise every time I heard English, and then it would not make a noise every time I heard a different language. So then the people would catch on that they only got the noise reward when they spoke English, and then it would kind of create more dominant firing of that.
Exactly. So, I mean, we played Pac-Man a bunch. There's probably 3 or 4 games I think we ended up playing.
Yeah, I let you switch, but I also want you to keep on the same game for a while, so it's nice and boring.
So it would be boring at times, but
yeah,
I would make up my own competitions in my head, like my own goals or whatever. But I would tell you after about halfway, probably about 3 or 4 months into things, I did just start feeling calmer, more chill. Like, so for the first couple months, I'm like, I'm trying this. I don't really see it yet. But I was patient, and like it was just a little bit at a time. I felt like I actually got better and better. And once that started happening, I was like, yeah, this is actually working for once. Something I'm trying is actually taking hold.
Yeah.
So we do the 70 sessions, and then it's time for the second brain scan. Yeah,
Best part.
She's excited about this. Go for it. All yours.
Well, I do want to say on your protocol sheet, what was exciting for me is that we had 4 goals laid out: anger, sleep, hypervigilance, and irritability. And you chose A to F scales. So your goals were A on all of those. You wanted to report A for anger, A for sleep, A for hypervigilance, A for irritability. And you started out at F for sleep, F for anger, C for sleep, C for hypervigilance, and you said B or C for irritability. And even this is the beginning of July, then beginning of August, end of August, you're still at all C's. And then there's even some regression back into the anger in September with some D's. So even in the middle of September, you had D's for 3 of them: anger, hypervigilance, and irritability, and a C for sleep. And then as you watch, as I scroll down on these, they go down and eventually there's Bs and they're more consistent. And on your 70th, 69th and 70th training, you're all Bs for all 4 of them, which to go from an F to a B on anger is remarkable. I mean, that's something, think about the construct of anger in itself is that explosiveness, that this thing that you can't control. And a lot of people don't think about it, but the reason anger is so awful is not just the anger and the explosion itself, but the aftermath and the shame that you feel. And if you're a person with any sort of trauma or internalization, and you have exploded on someone and you knew you shouldn't have, that shame and that grief from how you treated someone and just that negative self-talk can be brutal. So, I mean, the fact that you went from F to B on that was just, I was overjoyed to see that. That was always fun to see your scores. All right, so then we did a post EEG. And it's worth noting that, sometimes we'll do post EEGs like every month. We'll do follow-ups to see how things are changing and we can tweak protocols and things like that. You were far away in Dayton and your scores were still changing and we were still trying just some different protocols that I had in my hat. So this was a good time for us to review and really see. And the fact that we did it 70 trainings in made it more profound and more aha, which was really cool. So at this point, are you wanting me to share my screen or do you just want me to talk at first?
You can share your screen, whatever you want to do to give everybody the kind of best perception.
Okay.
Perspective.
Okay. That sheet that I was talking about, ignore my millions of tabs, but that sheet that I was talking about is this here. So if you train with me, this ends up being what you see, the goals that you set out for yourself, and then we indicate the dates that you trained, where you trained, the power thresholds, how long, what time, how you're feeling before, how you're feeling after, and then your subjective ratings of these goals as they go on so that you can really see how you're doing. Because sometimes better isn't as nice as, oh, I'm a 3 and I used to be a 10. So, all right. So maybe to give the most brief kind of summary of what you're looking at here, because these probably just look like squiggly waves to most of you, is I put a cap on Jim's head that had 19 holes in it. It looks like a swim cap, but with holes. And I squirted gel in those 19 holes. And internationally, there's a system of labeling these holes so that we, in electroencephalography in our world, we always know what they mean. And there have been a couple of recategorizations of a couple of the numbers, but in general, the letters stand for the region of the brain, and the numbers are left on the odd numbers on the left, even numbers on the right, and Z in the center. So FP is your frontal pole. F is your frontal region. T and C's here are your temporal and central regions. T and P's here are your temporal, parietal, and parietal regions. And then O is occipital. So when we look at the EEG, we're seeing the frontal pole, the frontal regions, the temporal and central regions, the temporal parietal and parietal regions, and then the occipital regions here. So we're looking at the front of the head to the back of the head. And when I meet with clients to show them their EEG, I clean it up in front of them. I show them the entire process of making sure the data is really easy to read from beginning to end. But I like to have the eye blinks in there and the cardioballistic activity or the heart rate activity in there. On any artifact possible, because I like to show muscle tension. I like to show how often someone's blinking if they have an attention problem. But for the sake of this, we've already cleaned these up to really show you some aha moments. So you can see here, this is Jim's eyes open EEG from June 10th of 2024. And if you look in the occipital region here, this is one of those neuromarkers that I was telling you about before, that is lambda. So when you see check mark looking triphasic theta in the back of the head, this is indicative of visual hypervigilance. This is the eyes wanting to check all the time and look around all the time. So when you look at his after, these are scaled the exact same way. So they're zoomed the exact same way. So even though you can see some checks, they are absolutely not as powerful. And what that means is that Jim's visual hypervigilance has calmed significantly. Now, visual hypervigilance comes from the amygdala that's deep in the limbic center, the limbic system of the brain. So the amygdala projects out into the occipital and the temporal parietal regions and basically tells the brain that it's not convinced that it's safe, and so it needs to watch out and be on guard all the time. So when we see visual hypervigilance, it's not just jumpy eyes because a person's inattentive. It is the deepest, most subconsciously scared part of a person saying, keep us safe, something's wrong. So when you see someone resolve lambda at the back of the head, you know that in the deepest, most vulnerable subconscious place in that person, that they are not as activated and the brain is not saying, we're unsafe, something's wrong. And that is huge. That's amazing. So what did I pull up for your eyes closed? Let's pull, you can see it eyes closed too. Lambda becomes lambdoid activity when the eyes close. You can see the check marks there compared to over here, not as strong. I have your before and after here. So let's look at these maps. Your eyes open. Before is on the top and after is on the bottom. So you experienced an increase in voltage, which is electrogenesis. It basically means that your brain was waking up on a more charged battery than you were experiencing before. You had more energy than you did. So this indicates metabolic improvement in your brain and in your body, which is really good. And you can see that more parts of the brain are coming online here. And that irritable, your irritability is not all gone. Your tendency to freak out or get upset before you really understand something is not totally gone. You have experienced remission of many of those angry outbursts, which is amazing. But there's still vulnerability in these areas. And you have also supplemented that with really good therapy and really awesome coping and awareness that has buffered that for sure. But I always like to be honest with people too. And I'm a perfectionist. So, I mean, if I would like to optimize the brain as much as we possibly can. This is kind of fast forwarding, but this is why I have you doing audio visual entrainment to follow up and to put little glasses and headphones on. So we'll talk about that. So these are scaled the same, and you can see where there were areas of little power before that now the brain is actually online. And instead of just communicating in these kind of right dominant and occipital dominant ways that were a lot of that like visual checking and that social blindness, now you're starting to see front and back communication, some more awareness. And then of course the right front is dominating because of the irritability. That was the basis of things. The eyes closed, same thing. These are scaled the same way. And I'm zoomed out. And if I zoom in, you would be able to see the beta frequencies and the gamma and beta 3 frequencies start to light up. But I wanted you to see even the parts that are coming online that are very obvious. So more power means more resources. Your brain has more resources, and that's affirmed by your visual continuous performance task. So your brain had to click when your finger had to click when your brain recognized there were two animals in a row, and it had to withhold the impulse to click when you saw plant, animal, plant, or plant person. Your initial test, you had 0 omission errors. You didn't miss clicking once. You had 0 commission errors. You did not click wrongly once. And in contrast to healthy subjects who responded in 403 milliseconds, your brain responded in 346 milliseconds. That goes right along with being accurate, precise, first responding, quick, reacting, but reacting precisely.
Anybody who actually knew me as a first responder would never use those adjectives to describe me.
Really?
Quick, fast? No. No. Go
Oh,
on, keep going. That's funny.
that's hilarious. Now, well, your reaction time was very fast with clicking. And this is compared to 57 healthy subjects who indicated they went through a battery of assessments and indicated that they had no emotional, traumatic, attention, sleep issues at all. So, I mean, you're being compared to an elite group of people, ages 41 to 45. Now go to your other one here. So this is after. Hold on. This is after. See, now I screwed myself up because I was looking at your report. All right. No omission errors, no commission errors, so still perfect performance, but your reaction time is 505 milliseconds compared to the healthy subjects who reacted in 403 milliseconds. And usually you would say you got worse. And even though you performed better, you're slower. But we needed you to be slower. So we got you slower without compromising your accuracy. And in fact, if you take 505 and you subtract it from the, what did we say? 346.
346.
Yeah, whatever that is. What's that math there?
Oh, put me on the spot. What was what was the first one? 504?
505.
505, 61.
All right.
Definitely 61.
Is it definitely 61?
Definitely.
All right. So
Kmart.
61 milliseconds faster before. And now you have slowed down. For the brain, just to give you an idea, those images flashed in 100 milliseconds, a tenth of a second. So 60 milliseconds might sound very, very brief, but to the brain, that is important. Things that happen in milliseconds are absolutely important to the brain. So superior performance, but you were able to slow down. It means that you're able to think before you react now. And your subjective reports that you are able to think before you react and that you're not as explosive go along with that. So that's really good. Another thing that's worth noting is that your inhibition suppression was really poorly organized at CZ. And you can see that the front of your brain is kind of arguing with the back of your brain here about when to click and how to perceive the object. And this is not what we want to see with inhibition suppression. We want you to feel confident about your decision. And at the end, you have a nice solid, this is exactly what we want to see for inhibition suppression. So super good, way better organized. Awesome. What else is really good to show? Here's your evidence of your voltage increase. So if you woke up and your phone battery was on 27%, you'd limit the use of your phone because you knew if you didn't have access to a charger that you had limited availability of calls or texts or whatever. You wouldn't just be scrolling on Reels all day, right? But if you woke up on 100%, you'd feel like you had more resources to kind of mess around or look something up on Google or whatever. Well, your brain knew that it was waking up with few resources. And when your brain has limited resources, it's in more of an emergency mode, metabolically speaking. And if you read Brain Energy by Christopher Palmer, this is a really captivating concept that all mental illness is derived by mitochondrial issues and metabolic issues, an energy lack in the brain and body. But when your brain wakes up and it knows it has limited resources, it is going to be snappy. It is not going to waste time. It is going to want things a certain way, and it's going to get upset if somebody's trying to use its resources when it only has limited resources. You increase, I'm scaled to the exact same scale here, and everything was processed in the exact same filters so that you can see that this voltage increase is genuine, which is really beautiful. This was you before, this is you after. One of the main things to point out here is that whereas before you had a lot of alpha yellow here, and theta was really big after here, not as much here. You started having some real beta come online afterwards. And some of it's muscle tension. So sawtoothy stuff here, there's beta buried underneath this that if I showed you the raw that you would see some of these frequencies are real. So some of it's muscle. and I'm always willing to show you artifact. But when beta comes online in these areas, it means that your executive function, your ability to think, judge, plan, decide, executively perform, is improving significantly. So that's amazing. This is overlaid, eyes open overlaid on top of each other so that you can see the change in the voltage. And how you got that. And then of course I took screenshots of that lambda and how you calm down that visual scanning, that visual hypervigilance there.
You said something important when we went over this meeting. You said that I should finally be able to relax.
Yeah.
And I thought about that. And again, I know I'm not the only one out there. I would be on a beach, I would sit in a chair, and I don't think I could make it 10 minutes. I couldn't. Um, I just need to go to a beach now to see if I can actually could, but I think I can. So like you told me I was unable to relax before, and I finally should be able to now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then you also mentioned that I would be able to focus better than I did before.
Yeah.
And then also my memory was better.
Yeah.
Like, and you could tell all that stuff from those scans.
Oh yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
so it's one thing for Steph be able to say that from reading the actual results of the scans, but I can tell you from how I feel that so much of that is accurate. In fact, I remember because like you said, you didn't know anything about me the first time you met me, and we went through this stuff, and you started to throw out things, even in that first session, just looking at things that you would have had no idea.
Huh.
So it's pretty interesting stuff. But like I can tell you now from doing this for 6 months that I just feel chill. I feel calm. Um, the anger is still there, but it's not as severe and it's not as often. Um, and I can catch it sometimes, not all the time, but I can catch it sometimes. And I definitely feel like I'm more able to focus on things than I was beforehand. So I would say my verdict is the, your voodoo, your magic, it worked.
It's not voodoo, it's measurable mental health. It's electroencephalography and neurofeedback. It's amazing. Well, and we're not done, which is the cool part. So now I'll pull up my little cocktail menu and I'll share my screen again. So now we're going to do audio visual entrainment. And what that's going to do is that's going to be something that you can use at home on demand. And so you get these eye sets. So you can get a view hole eye set that you can see through. This is the only one I have close to me right now. So a view hole eye set that you can see through, or you can get a white or multicolor eye set. So this is the multicolor eye set.
You know what those look like?
What?
Those look like Bret Hart sunglasses. You know who Bret Hart is?
I don't, unless it's like I'm thinking of Brett from that MTV reality show. What was that
No,
guy's name?
No, I don't even know what.
Brett Michael.
Bret Michaels. Okay,
Yeah.
from Poison. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Bret Hart is the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be pro wrestler
Oh.
from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
All right. Well, if you want, well, these are made in Canada, so maybe that was their inspiration.
There you go.
So if you get the color eye set, you get a little menu of the different things that color therapy can do. Like if you want cognition and focus, put yellow on. If you want physical arousal and energy, put red on. If you want calm, put blue on. So you can get the multicolor eye set, which is this guy. And then buttons on the inside of the eye set will control the lights that flash. And then you get headphones that come with it. And what happens is whether you can see through the eye set ones or your eyes are closed, you have auditory and visual pulsing happening at the same time. So your eyelids are picking up a frequency of light flashing at you, and your ears are picking up a wah 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 or ba boom ba boom ba boom ba boom. Well, you can pick, there's a few different sounds to choose from. And just like you can see on this cocktail menu here, I can determine what frequency. This is called the David Delight Plus by Mind Alive, and I sell these, and I'm a distributor of these, so I can get good pricing on them. But it tells you how many minutes a session is and what frequency it trains you at. So for some of my people who are lower income or who can't afford neurotherapy on the monthly basis, or are looking for something that they can do more on the go, that they don't have to have Wi-Fi and have me connect a few times a week with, this is a really good option, and it's still extremely powerful and healing. There's 5 settings: energize, meditate, brain boost, sleep, and mood boost or feel better. And then there's 5 different little sub settings underneath each one. So I look at your EEG and I determine what frequencies you need. And then I'll tell you to do like light bulb 2, for example, if you're really wanting to focus that day and remember better. And it'll pulse 13.5 hertz on the left and 18 on the right, because it's contralateral. Whatever you hear in the right ear will process in the left brain, right ear, left brain, left ear, right brain. And so we can do whatever frequency we're needing. You can put it on to go to sleep. You can put it on to have a bunch of energy, like you get a cup of coffee without having the coffee. You can use it to meditate and to focus and all sorts of things. So it's a really good option for like $350 or whatever. It depends on the eye set that you pick, but sometimes the base machine is $350, and then the eye set, complexity of the eye set that you get or how many eye sets determines if it's $50 or $100 more on that. But yeah, so this thing is awesome, and this is what we're going to do now moving forward to help you continue to really bust through that anger.
I got mine on the way.
Yeah,
Supposedly.
you do.
But it's not the Bret Hart glasses. If he would have showed that to me ahead of time, I might have chosen differently.
You picked the peepers, didn't you?
I just hope it's not like my son's VR set. Like I put that on and I didn't even get into the game. Like
That's disorienting.
I was playing in the just messing around with the menu, and I got like dizzy and weird feeling.
No, you're not looking at anything with this. So
Okay.
you got the peepers, is that right? Did you get the ones?
The clear ones.
Yeah, the True
Yeah.
View. I should call them what they are. Yeah.
There you go.
The True View glasses, yes. So with you can check emails and write and read and, still be alert. And so those lights are going to flicker peripherally all around your eye, but you're still going to get that frequency. But you get really used to it, and then eventually you tune it out, but your brain's still getting it in your visual cortex. The really cool thing about audiovisual entrainment, and I did talk on this at the School of Neurotherapy conference in November on the auditory cortex. But if you think about it, sensory perception has to be screened through your limbic system, through your safety seeking, through your safety seeking system here. It has to be screened to make sure it's safe before it can enter conscious awareness in the cortex. So whatever you're hearing and whatever you're seeing, right, or these sounds that are coming in are getting processed through these deep structures that also happen to get impaired when you have trauma and vicarious trauma through first responding especially. So because those frequencies are able to hit as deep as the limbic system, theoretically, you are also resolving and healing senses of safety, visual hypervigilance, auditory hypervigilance, all that scanning, and the trauma symptoms that you have. So I love it. It's still a really, really good option for training if you can't do the neurofeedback.
And the nice thing too is it's one-time fee.
Yeah, that one you just pay for the device and then you own it.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's really
and that's how you do your maintenance.
that's
because if you don't use it, you lose it.
No, the neurofeedback.
Well, I know. I was just quoting the 40-year-old virgin.
Okay, well, it's important to note that neurofeedback is short-term intensive, but long-term permanent. So you do it 3 or 4 days a week for 2 to 6 months, depending on your severity of symptoms. Some people love how it feels, so they'll do it for longer, and then they'll space out trainings. But then your brain learns it like a language. Like you don't have to think about riding a bike or speaking in English whenever you do it. But at one point, you did have to be very conscious of where your feet were and balancing and getting the words out and the grammar. So it becomes automatic. Now, I will say, it's like forging a new path in your brain. So your brain still has, I think we talked about this with your family when we met on the 10th. Was it the 10th? Was that long ago?
Yeah.
Anyway, 6 days ago. That felt a lot more recent than that. That super angry outburst path you forged. And that is there. That's cut. Your brain remembers that for sure. Now, the brain's neuroplastic and it can always change, but it remembers that that was a way that it could respond. We have forged new paths to get it to fire at different frequencies so that it has the opportunity to fire in those ways. But it still has the choice to be angry and reactive if it wants to. This also is why sometimes you do resort to that old path, that it's not as frequent and the intensity is not as bad. And the most important part is you can come back to your family afterwards and talk to them about it, whereas before you could not. There was too much pride or defense. So you're reacting that way, but then you're overcoming it with these new kind of coping strategies that really the new firing speed reinforced. That's something we usually think that only therapy and working through that coping can do. But even firing that way gave you the ability to more compassionately address your family after that happened. That was super cool.
So you mentioned before we even started the show, you talked about I asked you like, is this the typical results that you see? And you mentioned that it's typical for somebody that's doing the work, that actually is putting the time in, that's doing 3 sessions a week plus other therapy and just doing the work, then you will get the results. Fair
Yeah.
to say?
Yeah, exactly. If you put the effort in, and a lot of times I've got like blue light and sleep and dietary changes that I really want people to do alongside so that it's a really potent training. So especially if you follow the protocol and you're willing to stop eating a little bit earlier than usual in the evening and maintain your sleep hygiene and not be on your phone right before you fall asleep or wear blue light glasses, whatever it is that I kind of prescribe you there. But um, yeah, it works. It helps.
Yeah.
It's awesome. You did
Uh,
great. And you're going to keep doing great. And we're going to follow up. And maybe when we do another one of these after audiovisual entrainment has continued to help you so that we can show the potency of that as well.
that'd be cool to do and
Yeah.
see. Yeah, you know what? We should do that before October.
Mm.
Because in October, you and I are taking this show and doing it live at the Firefighter Health and Wellness Conference in exotic Beaver Creek, Ohio.
Yeah.
Yes. So October 15th, you and I are going to share a stage.
Yeah.
And it's going to be Big Lebowski themed.
Is it really?
Yes, it is. I didn't tell you that already?
No, if you did, I forgot.
Well, surprise.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, so we'll be in Beaver Creek, Xenia, whatever it is, in October.
Cool.
But if anybody wanted to reach out, and I sure hope they do before then, where can they find you?
Text is easiest for me. Text me at 513-667-2165 and just tell me who you are and how I can help you. And I would love to help. And if you're not in Cincinnati or near it, I still like to get your EEG if I can. So I'll plug in your zip code in my networking page and see if there are any EEG providers who can do some eyes closed, eyes open, and maybe task recordings for you. And then I'll still read and interpret those. I've also had people travel to me from all over to get the EEG, and then they just travel home. We meet on Zoom to process, and then they rent equipment. So, but yeah, text me. That's the easiest. You can also go to rightmindwellnesscenter.org, and you can check out more of what I do. I need to update my page because I've added even more services than I put on there, but Yeah, I want to help. And you guys are a really special population to me. I already specialize in trauma and suicidality as it is. So, first responders already have a really special place in my heart for many reasons.
Well, I can't thank you enough for really taking care of me.
Hmm,
Um,
did all the work.
hmm. Like if quite honestly, if you didn't step in when you did, like I don't know. Like I think my family was pretty much done with me. They were writing me off. So you, you know, really gave me a second chance with them.
That's incredible. I'm really glad. I give the credit, where I give the credit.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're out there, if you're struggling with similar things and you probably tried a lot of things, give this a shot.
Yeah. We're here for you.
And and it worked for me. I'm vouching for it. So yeah, get a hold of Steph.
Yeah.
So with that, let's get out of here.
Later, Gator.
Yes. So she is Steph and I'm Jim and we are out of time. Talk to you next month.
See you guys.
In the firehouse, every second counts. The best tool for the job? A well-rested firefighter. Dreamseat Firehouse Furniture, built for durability, designed for comfort, because your best tool is